All right, what's going on, guys? It's just me today. No chat with Zach. Mainly because today I want to talk about DC Comics and the current state that DC Comics is in. I am a huge DC fan. Zach is he's a fan of DC, but he's not like he doesn't get super in depth with it the way I do. He enjoys the characters and he enjoys most DC stories that I put him onto. But in terms of him just like going out and like buying DC comics on his own, he's not really into it that way. So I figured I would just do this on my own. In our last segment that I did with him, I touched on this topic briefly, but I really want to dive into it with a lot more detail. So that's what this one's going to be about. Now, before I get into my real opinion on DC Comics lately and what I think the real problem is, we got to do a little like backtracking and then kind of bring the story up to date. So, uh, back in the year, back in 2011, the DC universe had kind of gotten a little out of hand. It was really kind of convoluted and crazy, and it was because of this thing that DC likes to do, which is overuse the concept of the multiverse. Um, for those of you who don't know, I imagine most of you do know, a multiverse is where you have a bunch of alternate realities, and within each of those realities, you have pretty much the same characters, they're just slightly different. Like, for instance, in the DC multiverse, almost every reality, every universe has a Superman, a Batman, a Wonder Woman. They're all just slightly different. Uh, and DC has used the multiverse and gotten in trouble with it before. Back in the 80s, they ended up having to do a mini series called Crisis on Infinite Earths, which it's not a great read, but what's great about it is what it did for DC Comics. It took the entire multiverse and condensed it down into one reality. So essentially, it got rid of the multiverse. It simplified things because now that everything was condensed into one universe, DC was able to tell a cohesive narrative. It was a chain of events, one of them following the other. And what this did was it allowed readers to know exactly, it was easier for them to know exactly what was going on with DC Comics, and it was also easier for new fans to hop on the train because you could go into a comic book store and it was very easy for people who worked in comic book stores or if you just had friends that were really into it, it was very easy for them to tell you where to start and where to go from there, and it was easy to follow. Um, Later on down the road, they brought the multiverse back, and the cycle repeated itself. It got more and more crazy and convoluted. And so in 2011, the end of 2011, DC, well, more like the summer of 2011, DC published this new event called Flashpoint. And I don't have a copy of Flashpoint here with me, but what Flashpoint did was it it did not get rid of the multiverse. It did not condense things back into one reality, but from what I gather of it, and I read a lot of uh, the comics from that year, it reset the DC universe or the DC multiverse. It took everything back to step one. The Justice League got a brand new origin. Superman got a brand new origin. Wonder Woman got a new origin story. Like everything was taken back and started over. Everything that needed to be. There are some characters and some storylines that were fine the way they were, and they tried to leave those alone. But everything that needed a hard reset, they did it. And from what I remember of that time, it was really good. I have here the first. This is the first Justice League trade paperback from after Flashpoint. The DC wide initiative after Flashpoint was called the New 52 because they were saying there's 52 different alternate realities within the multiverse, and now that the timeline has been reset on all of them, thanks to Flashpoint, this is the New 52. So this is the first Justice League story arc from the New 52, and this is basically the Justice League's new origin story. in this new multiverse. And it was great because, like I said a minute ago, it gave a, a solid starting point. So now you could tell new fans where to start with DC Comics. Because prior to that, you walked into a comic book store and you had no idea where to begin, and even if you knew where to begin, you wouldn't know where to go to from that beginning point. This it was a hard punch on the reset button, and it looked like it was going to fix a lot. Well, over time, they kind of started to abandon that initiative of like resetting things. They started to go back on that. They started to acknowledge and talk about prior events that had happened before Flashpoint. They started to reference things that didn't add up in this new timeline, this new multiverse, and things got kind of crazy. They did some things with some characters that people didn't like. Like they tried to make Superman really edgy. For some reason, every single character's costume in the New 52 had a bunch of like panel lining going down it. I don't know. There were some choices that people weren't happy with, and in the year 2016, DC God is what I'm going to call him, Jeff Johns. He I don't know if I want to say he stepped in or if he was given the job of fixing it. And so he wrote a new one-shot comic book which started a new initiative called DC Universe Rebirth, and this is the hardback copy of that one shot of DC Universe Rebirth. And what this did was it offered an explanation as to why things in the DC multiverse seemed off. And the explanation was that this really powerful character named Dr. Manhattan, he's from Watchmen, he, during the events of Flashpoint, altered some stuff. Without any of the DC characters knowing, he altered some stuff. And that's why Superman doesn't seem the way he was before. That's why, a lot of Batman's timeline doesn't add up. The official description of what he did was this character, Dr. Manhattan, he removed 10 years of time from the DC multiverse, mainly from Earth Prime. The way the multiverse works is there's a Prime Earth, which is the original, and all other alternate realities are spawned off of that one. So if you alter the timeline on the original Earth, the Prime Earth, by default, the rest of them get altered as well. This was brilliant, and people loved this new initiative. It brought legacy back. Batman, it looked for a while like he was going to get married. It brought back, they killed off the edgier New 52 Superman, and they brought the Superman from before the Flashpoint back into this, the more hopeful, truth, justice, and the American way Superman. And it just overall fixed a lot, and it offered this promise of a really cool crossover event where we were going to see the Watchmen universe and the DC universe kind of collide, and people were just kind of like, what is Dr. Manhattan's role in this? Like, in Watchmen, he is like a god, like he has damn near unlimited power. And throughout most of the story of Watchmen, he's really kind of apathetic towards humanity, and he's just starting to view himself as this like outsider, this god that's walking amongst humans. But by the end of the Watchmen story, it's supposed to be like his faith in humanity was restored, and so we're left kind of wondering at this. It's like, why has he done this? Why has Dr. Manhattan, fucked with the DC universe, the DC multiverse? So this was awesome, and we were really, really excited about this. It brought Green Arrow and Black Canary back together. You see him propose to her. It brought Aquaman and Mera back together. You saw him propose to her. The pre-Flashpoint Superman, he came back into the fold with married to Lois as it was before, but now they have a son because there was a story arc where he was trapped on a world under a red sun, and he was depowered. He was pretty much a mortal human. And while he was a mortal human, he was able to conceive a child with Lois. So they have a son, Jonathan. Jonathan was the new Superboy. It started to tease that it was going to bring back the Justice Society of America. It brought back with the Wally West Flash, the original Wally West Flash. It was really, really good, and people had their hopes up. But then, and what it was teasing was this series, Doomsday Clock. And this is just the first issue of Doomsday Clock. There's 12 total. But that's what this whole Rebirth initiative was building to, was this series. This was going to be it. This is where all the questions were going to be answered. What did Dr. Manhattan do exactly? Why did he do it? How is it going to be resolved? And all of Doomsday Clock is out right now. All 12 issues of it. But this issue, the first issue of Doomsday Clock, was released on November 22nd, 2017. And the final issue was just released this past, I believe, let's see, I have it right here, December 18th of 2019. So, what does that mean? It means it took a little over 2 years to get this all written, illustrated, and published. Now, it says here that it was originally intended to release monthly and end in December of 2018. And there were some planned breaks in there in March and in August of 2018. But however, in January of 2018, it was announced the series would take a break in March and April before releasing again in May, and also switching to a bi-monthly schedule, with the series now ending in July of 2019. Issue number 8 was pushed back from November 28th to December 5th. Issue number 9 was pushed back from January 23rd to March 6th. Issue 10 was pushed back from March 27th to May 29th. Issue 11 was pushed back from May 22nd to September 4th. This is all in 2019. And then the 12th and final issue managed to hit shelves on December 18th, 2019. So there's been some talk about how the guy behind it, like I said, the DC god, Jeff Johns, boom, DC Rebirth, Jeff Johns, he had, like, there was some dispute. He had a bit of a falling out with DC Comics, and that was part of the reason, or I don't know. All I know is, since it took so much longer for DC to publish that Doomsday Clock story, they kind of just said fuck it. Because, little piece of information I left out, Doomsday Clock was originally supposed to take place 1 year prior to the current events of DC Comics. So let me clarify that. The series, this issue, Doomsday Clock number 1, comes out November 22nd of 2017. So, that means whatever other DC comics were coming out around then, those were taking place a year before this. The idea was, by the time this series ended, which, like I said, the original end was meant to be, let's see, supposed to end in December of 2018. By the time this ended in December 2018, the rest of the DC comics were supposed to have caught up to the beginning of this. Since it was delayed from completion by a little over an extra year, DC, it looks like they just kind of said, fuck it, we don't care about it anymore. And they started writing other stories and doing other stuff that now completely contradicts Doomsday Clock. So these two things, the Rebirth and Doomsday Clock, and they both go hand in hand, they were meant to be the answer. They were meant to be the solution, this huge fix. And people were responding well to it. This has been critically acclaimed. This was very, very well received. Everyone was happy about it. People loved what they did by bringing back the old Superman. People loved what they did by restoring legacies, giving Superman a son. People loved that they put characters who were supposed to have relationships back together, like Green Arrow and Black Canary, Aquaman and Mera. People loved everything about this, but it just seems like in that time, since it took an extra amount of time, they said fuck it. And now they have written other stories that are within the continuity of the DC multiverse right now, and they just don't add up to this. They don't. So they've just completely abandoned this solution. And not only was it a solution, it was a good solution that people were liking. So what does this mean to me, at least? To me, what this means is that, and I've thought this for a while, DC seems to have a problem with continuity and telling a cohesive narrative. What does that mean? It means DC and the people who work creatively at DC seem to have a problem with rules. They don't like rules. It's part of why they like the multiverse so much. Because when you have the multiverse, you can do wacky, insane crap. Like Batman Ninja. And you can just write it off as, oh, it takes place on Earth 397. It gives these writers and these illustrators and these creative artist people license to just go off the freaking wall and do whatever they want, do crazy wacky crap, and they like it because that's who they are. They're creatives, they're artists. But when it comes to like what the fans want, and by that what's gonna sell and make the company money, so in other words what the executives want, we want continuity. We want a cohesive narrative. We want a sequence of events that we can follow. And I want to say beginning to end, but we all know DC Comics is never meant to have an end. So we want to be able to follow it piece by piece. We want to be able to like take our friends to a comic book store and be like, you want to get into DC Comics? It's super easy. Here's where you start, and boom, you just follow it right along. It's easy to follow. You can follow it without any problem. Comic book retailers would also love to be able to do that. Here's where you start, and then you follow it along. But the creative people at DC seem to not like this because listen, you just heard the series of events that I explained from the beginning of this video till now. This is not the first time that they've had trouble with their universe getting all fucking, it seems like every time that happens and then they get close to fixing it, all of a sudden the writers and the artists tend to, specifically the writers, it seems like they tend to kind of go, do we really want it fixed though? Because if we fix it, then there's going to be all these rules about continuity, and then I'm not going to be able to do my insane new Batman Ninja idea. Then I'm not going to be able to write the story about how Batman becomes a Native American tribal elder and starts fighting off evil forest spirits. Like, that's the kind of crazy, wacky stuff that these people do sometimes. So the problem at DC is that I don't know why this problem exists, but it clearly is the problem. There is no one there who can put their foot down and say, guys, artists, writers, I don't care if these rules about continuity bother you. You will adhere to them, or you will not work at this company. And I don't know why they don't have anyone doing that. Are they, honest to God, so afraid that these artists and these writers will just up and leave? Let them. Let them go. I'm telling you right now, on the 1 in a billion chance that there is someone at DC who can make a difference about all this, and they just happen to be watching this video, I'm telling you right now, all over this country, there are like young adult people working their minimum wage jobs, going to college, whatever the case may be, and they love this stuff. They love DC. And they know it like the back of their hand, and they are 100% capable of writing you tons and tons of kick-ass DC Comics stories. And I'm telling you right now, you wouldn't even have to pay them that much to do it. You would just a livable wage, a livable salary. That's all you'd have to pay them. They would do it. So if the problem is, and I'm not saying I know that it is, but if the problem is that every single time you try to make your artists and your writers follow the rules of continuity, they threaten to get up and walk away, let them go. Let them go and go hire some new talent. I'm telling you right now, if the president of DC walked through that door into this room and said, "We want to hire you to work for DC Comics. We're going to give you a bunch of creative control, but the only problem is you're going to have to follow our rules regarding continuity and making sure that our stories line up and make sense." I'm in. I would follow all the rules, and I would tell some great stories. I know many people who love this stuff. They would tell great stories. I don't know why it's so hard. Like, I try to sit here and imagine how that meeting must have gone when they were like, all right, so Doomsday Clock it's gonna be later than we thought. But like we already told people that by the time Doomsday Clock ends, the rest of the DC multiverse, the rest of this DC stories need to have led into issue 1 of Doomsday Clock. And then someone at the board meeting was just like, okay, well, you're telling us now that we have this extra year where we don't really have anything planned, but we have to come up with, not only do we have to come up with extra stuff to fill in this year, but we also have to make sure it ties into the first issue of Doomsday Clock. And then me, being the head honcho, I'd have been, yes, that's exactly right. You have to come up with some extra stuff now, and it also needs to tie into issue 1 of Doomsday Clock. And then anyone in that room that had a problem with that, goodbye. Go to Marvel. Threaten to go to Marvel, threaten to go to Image, see if we care. Like, there's so many people out there who know. It's not even just with DC. Like, we're seeing a problem with Star Wars right now. There are so many. It wouldn't even be that hard. You could go to any college campus in this country and you could find some undergraduate in his dorm room eating pizza, and he's obsessed with this stuff. And that dude, he works part-time at a local something or other, drives Uber, I don't know, and he goes to college and he reads and he just sitting there eating pizza, drinking Mountain Dew, playing video games, and he knows DC like the back of his hand. And that dude, I'm telling you right now, he would probably work for, like, if you offered him like 40 grand a year, I guarantee you he would work, and he would do some great work for you. So I don't understand, like, when all these like big name writers and artists threaten to walk away, artists too. I guarantee you there's plenty of people out there who, like, in their off time, they're doodling pictures of Superman and Green Lantern and all these characters, and they have good design ideas for them. I don't understand why you're so afraid to let these people walk away. If they're not going to play by the rules, tell them to get the fuck out. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. Because it's like, how many times are you going to go through this song and dance? How many times are you going to fuck up your brand, then get like super close to fixing it and regaining your fan base, and then just like letting it all go to shit again? How many times are you going to do that? I don't know. Until I get some kind of definitive proof that DC has finally put their foot down and they are taking a firm stance in favor of continuity and cohesive narratives, I'm done. My new strategy now, I'm gonna engage in DC the same way I do with Marvel. Marvel has a cohesive narrative. It's called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the way I do Marvel is, whenever a new Marvel movie comes out, or a Marvel TV show, what I like to do is I like to go and look up what story arcs from the comics were used as inspiration for that TV show or for that movie. And then I go buy those comics, those story arcs, in like trade paperback form, and I read those so that I can know the source material that inspired this movie or this TV show. And that's where I'm at right now at DC. And no, I'm not talking about the DCEU. Like, maybe they're going to get that together, maybe they're not, but I'm not talking about the DCEU. I'm talking about the DC animated movie universe. I'm talking about Justice League War, Justice League Throne of Atlantis, Teen Titans Judas Contract. What else? Suicide Squad. Was it Hell to Pay? Yeah, Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay, Justice League Dark. DC, I don't know if people are aware of this, but with their they are doing what Marvel has done. They're just doing it in an animated format. The DC animated movie universe is kick ass, and they've already gone pretty in depth with it. So that's where I'm at right now with DC. I am from here on out. I am just going to buy every single DC animated movie that they make, as long as it fits within the universe. They tend to do some other projects as well, like the Batman Ninja kind of shit. But anything that takes place within the continuity, within the narrative of the DC animated movie universe, I'm gonna buy it, and I'm also gonna buy the comic book story arcs that were used to as inspiration for them, and I'm gonna read those, and I'm gonna watch those, and that's gonna be it. And everything else I'm just gonna wash my hands of until I see that someone or some group of people at DC Comics, at DC Entertainment, has put their foot down and has taken a firm stance in favor of continuity and cohesive narratives. So that's my take on the issue. This came about like last week because Doomsday Clock was wrapping up, and I was like, okay, because right now Batman in the comics, he's gone back to wearing, the traditional black and gray Batman costume, but he's gone back to wearing the black underwear. And Superman's going back to wearing the red underwear. That was something that with the New 52 back in 2011, that was something I loved. The underwear are outdated. They are dumb. It is an outdated concept. I don't care what anyone says about, oh, it's traditional. It's just, that's the iconic look of the character. Fuck that. It is a dumb look to be wearing some spangly outfit with underwear on the outside of your pants. All right? Like, look at some of the Marvel characters. Most of them, do their costumes have a certain motif to them? Sure. But like Thor's is just Asgardian battle armor. That's his costume. Captain America, yeah, it has a red, white, and blue motif, but in modern times, in the modern comic books, it's not a costume anymore. It resembles like body armor, like soldiery body armor. Who else? The Hulk. The Hulk's just damn near naked all the time. Like, this idea of people wearing these spangly outfits and like costumes, it's outdated. All right, I get it. Like for like certain characters, it makes sense. Like Daredevil or Batman, because the whole thing is like they're meant to be this like urban legend figure, like the Bat or the Devil. With stuff like that, it's fine. And Spider-Man is always gonna be okay, just because they managed to make that costume iconic without adding anything to it that's really gonna kind of like lose. What's the word I'm looking for? Spider-Man's costume doesn't have anything on it like the underwear that's going to go out of style. The underwear thing has gone out of style. But right now in the comics, Superman and Batman are back to wearing their underwear. In Doomsday Clock, it clearly shows Batman is not wearing the underwear on the outside of his costume, and he's back to wearing the yellow bat emblem on his chest. And I wanted to know, I was like, okay, Doomsday Clock is done now. When is Batman going to switch to the Doomsday Clock costume? Because it's all supposed to lead up to that. And then I started seeing articles online about how DC has just said, fuck Doomsday Clock. I'm done. I'm done with it. And I'm going to take the same stance with it that I take with Star Wars, which is, as a fan, as a consumer of this entertainment, the only voice we have is our money. The only way we can truly let them know that they're fucking up is to deprive them of our money. Don't give them your money. If they make something good, I'm gonna give them my money. I bought the Jedi Fallen Order game because that's a good piece of Star Wars entertainment. So I was happy to give them my money for it. But like Rise of Skywalker, I was skeptical about before it even came out. And then I read all the spoilers online before I even went and saw it because I was determined not to give them after Last Jedi, I was determined to not give them a cent of my money for that movie if it wasn't going to please me. And based on the spoilers and everything I read, it was not going to please me. So I have not gone and seen it, and I never will pay to see that movie. And that's the stance I'm taking now with DC and their comics. You will get my money for the animated movies that take place within the animated movie universe, and you will get my money for the comic book story arcs that are used to inspire those movies. And that's all you got for now. So take that for what you will. That's my 30 minutes on that. Should have another video up pretty soon with me and Zach. There's a couple other things. I got a couple topics in mind, but this is, like I said, this is just one I needed to do by myself. He's not that big of a DC fan. So take that for what you will. Please subscribe to the channel if you like. Check us out on Facebook. And other than that, I will see you next time.